there are only 8 days left until the first presidential debate. And the Wall Street Journal is now reporting that Donald Trump plans on live tweeting the whole thing. A departure from the advice he's getting from his political advisors and a sign that he has, like, literally nothing going on. I mean, like, what a...
It's a long flight to the G20.
Casual.
We were debating, no pun intended. It was interesting, Nicole. I'm going to let you say your piece, that you would let the moderators read his tweets. I'm surprised. I would go completely the other way. You're letting him produce it. Obviously, how you take on Trump is going to define who's going to win this. I just think at that moment you inoculate and you keep him out. It's interesting. I would have thought you would have gone the other way on that.
No, my point was that if he's sitting there as president of the United States and he's so insecure and he's so obsessed with the 2 nights of debates that he's chiming in with attacks on Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg or Elizabeth Warren. If I were a moderator, I mean, this is the race that the eventual Democratic nominee is going to have to run. How to run against, I mean, Hillary Clinton had to figure it out. How to run against Trump. How to sort of do what Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we stay high, but also how to keep him at bay. You cannot defeat him without going through.
That's the race. That's the race for 18 months. I'm saying that night you're giving him more power than he should have.
Well, forget about power. I mean, he's at 40%. He's the most unpopular president ever. He's obsessed with television and cable. And the Democrats lean in. If he tweets about you, ask them how they'd respond.
I would leave that to the candidates.
He's going to be shooting missiles at them from Air Force One.
At North Korea or the Democrats?
No, at the Democrats. I mean, this is another.
Are you sure?
Whatever else you think about this, yeah, look, this is another norm that's going to get nuked, because you're going to have the president on Air Force One on his way overseas to do the country's business, firing back at these Democrats back on stage. Do you respond to that at all? Does politics stop at the water's edge? If the president is using the Wi-Fi on Air Force One to attack you while on
his way, it's a Hatch Act violation to begin with.
We're so far on the other side of the looking glass here. I just don't know.
But it comes down back to what I said before. He's too busy tweeting, not leading. And if he's supposed to be representing the U.S. and preparing to represent Americans at G20 Summit, get offline.
It's going to be great programming here on NBC, but there's probably better ways you could spend your time on your way to go see,
I can only imagine a few things he could be doing.
But let me remind you, some of the things that have gone down at the G20, he pulled Putin aside without an American translator, just with a Russian translator, and told some sort of malarkey lie about the meeting being about I mean, it's not like he does America's business necessarily at foreign summits.
Right, so this is less wacky by comparison. But I do wonder how it forces, if you talk to any of the Democratic contenders who are not the front runners, they know that they have a big challenge, right? They're sharing that stage with a lot of people. They're going to get a few minutes. They're going to have to introduce themselves to most of the American public. They're going to have to make a very sharp case for why they can beat Donald Trump. And then there's been this question that I know you've been asking about whether or not they're going to go after Biden, Sanders, the front runners, and create that type of tension. This potentially complicates that for them, right? Like, do you just all stay in your lane and speak to your common foe, or then do you take that opportunity to try to bring down someone who's leading in your field?
I think you look, though, at the people that are doing the best. And this is the campaign strategist in me. I'm not a television programmer. I'm not making any comments about what my colleagues at MSNBC should do. If you work on a campaign and your mission is to show that your candidate is the best person to beat the opponent, the best way to show the voter that is to try to beat your opponent. The reason Biden is ahead is in part because he announced with a 2x4 to Donald Trump's blatant racism. The reason Elizabeth Warren is number 2 is because she has been the loudest, most succinct, eloquent voice for Trump's impeachment.
There's only one issue in this election: who can beat Trump. There's not a second, third, fourth, or fifth. I'm not debating that. I'm saying that's not the night to introduce it.
I think we and the folks who are paying super close attention to this are a little bit ahead of ourselves on this. I mean, there's still, in a lot of these polls, a plurality of voters who don't know who Kamala Harris is or who Amy Klobuchar is. I mean, they literally don't know who these people are. So I think there is an element of introduction that's going to come to this. There will be plenty of time. If you can make enough money, if you can get yourself on the stage in July and August and September, there will be time for all of that. People don't know who these folks are.
And to Alicia's point, it's yes and. Stand up against Trump, but also get your message out. Inform people about who you are. Educate them about your vision for the nation. You can't proceed in this race without doing that, because they need to know who you are.
It's not a vision race. It's a beat Trump race.
Yeah, and
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think it's both.
And I'm sure you're right. I think Republicans have PTSD because in a field of 17, there were people that had ideas and they were all demolished by Trump, who smeared them. So I hope the Democrats fare differently and better.
But he's not in this primary.
I you know my position. I'll vote for y'all's bus. Whoever you nominate, you got my vote. Alicia, what do you make of sort of where this Democratic primary is at this moment?
Wow, that's a big question. I think it's still early, I think is the truth. And I think a lot of those polls have to do with name recognition. I think a lot of the fundraising numbers have to do with really boring and unsexy things like the infrastructure of a campaign. So if you are Bernie Sanders, if you are Joe Biden, and you have run for president before, you have a hell of a list. You have a hell of an infrastructure. Even if you're Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, you've run in a big state before for federal office, you too have a national list. I mean, I was interviewing Julian Castro, and he said to me, part of the reason I'm having trouble breaking through is I've got no list, right? Like I had to build that up from the start. And some of those pieces, which are like not the things we talk about on cable TV, are what actually determine those first few months of a race, who can stay in and where they can place their bets.
And you're on the road. What's your ground truth for me?
Wow, gosh, this is tough. Look, the enthusiasm gap, I think the Joe Biden enthusiasm gap is kind of a real thing. He is drawing an older crowd. It's a very nostalgic crowd. It's folks who love him for being Barack Obama's best friend and sticking with him. But I think he's going to have to maintain that as he wears further on into this campaign.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.